we were talking about the vision of, actually I was telling somebody earlier this week that I thought that vision teaching was going to be 4 weeks, but me and you was talking about that, but turned out we're in March and we're still finishing up the vision. But we have been talking about desires, but we started out talking about the last couple of weeks, Psalms 37:4 says, delight yourself in the Lord, he'll give you the desires of your heart. So and it's kind of what we've been doing this week. We've been delighting ourselves in the Lord. You heard Stella talk about the desires of her heart. We've been lining it up with writing the vision and making it plain. And so we hit the 5 aspects of the vision, which is our relationship with God, our relationship in our marriage, which comes after our relationship with God, our relationship with our children, which comes after the marriage, relationship with our extended family and friends, and then we've been talking about desires. And it's been a unique twist on desires because it hasn't been necessarily so focused on things as it has been focused on us. Meeting God's desire was ultimately puts us in position to receive our desires. So I gave you a little, let's see if I can do it like this. I gave you an example of how the whole thing, God has designed us for a particular reason. So when we're delighting ourselves in the Lord and the things that he wants us to do and investing in his kingdom, it's easy for him to take care of us. Just like we take care of God's house, God takes care of our house. You know, even Solomon, when it was time for him to build a temple, he was like, well, listen, I got a temple I want to build, but I'm not building the temple until I build God his house first. You know, God was like, I don't really need a house, but that's a smart thing to do. So when what's important to the kingdom is important to us, then what's important to us is important to the kingdom. And so we were saying how, so the key to us getting our desires is to making sure that we put ourselves in a position to draw in those desires. Something we were talking about earlier this week, seek ye first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and all things will be added unto us. And we said the number one thing in the kingdom, or the reason why we were put here, was to save souls. So how has our life been reduced to just awards and accomplishments and promotions? You know, and how do we, you know, we've oversaw or had to interact with thousands of people at work, and we're so busy looking past them because we're trying to jockey for position, you know, or promotion. So how do we forget about people? You know, we say, you know, man, you know, the church, I don't need to go to church. Church is in your heart. You know, I could be at the house, I could watch TV, and I'm sure you can do those things, but who are you touching at the crib? What souls are you saving at the crib? You know, you would think you would want to go out and touch somebody, right? Since God is touching you. That's what the thought. So we talked about how what happened was that originally we were designed to be spirit, soul, and body. God breathed in man, and he became the breath of life. Genesis 2:7, right? And so we were spirit influencing the soul, which houses your mind, your will, your emotions, your intellect, and your imagination. It's where you make your choices at. And then that the spirit and soul together influence the body, right? Because we are a spirit, we have a soul, and we live in our body. 1 Thessalonians 5. And we said when sin happened, it flipped things to where the body, the flesh, carnality, that's flesh, started influencing the mind, which now it's running the spirit. And that's what we call carnally minded. And we went through the scripture in Romans 8, to be carnally minded is death. But to be spiritually minded is life and peace. So we talked about how God's original plan, you always hear this, is to save your soul. Saving souls. What profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? And then we gave you, we broke down how the scripture's always talking to your soul. So the spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak. Right? So walk in the spirit and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. So the word is always talking to your soul. So we talked about that. And so then what we realized is God's trying to get us back to our original design. I know me and Devin was talking about this earlier this week. And so how, and I gave you John 1. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the same was in the beginning with God. And nothing was made without him. But then that's John 1:1, but John 1:14 says, and that Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld him the only begotten of the Father. So we know he's talking about Jesus because John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. So we said that that word became flesh. But why? So flesh could become the word. So that word came to dwell in us, to submerge itself in us so we could be the word. Because originally when God breathed into us, when you speak out words, right? So when God breathed into us, he breathed into us that breath of life. He spoke his words into us and we came alive. So we were spirit influencing the soul and the mind, guiding our body. Then after sin, it flipped. So God sent Jesus to pay the price for sin and flip it back into us being walking spirits. Speaking spirits is what the body says. A living soul is a speaking spirit. Right? All right, so that's kind of our what is that? Review. Yeah, that's what it is. All right, so today we've had a good week of fast, and some of the stuff I gave you today or the last few weeks as we've been talking about business, some people have got it, run with it. Some people are experiencing it. Some people's like, it's a good little nugget, good little word, or it's too deep, or I don't understand. But we've had a week of fast, and so this week, today you're going to see what God has been trying to say all along. Because, if you think about it, there's people, you know who you are, but you'll walk out of the door and be like, that didn't make sense to me. I had a young man this week in my group at the high school, and so somehow we started talking about, God, and then it was who's living by faith, and then it was who living by human faith. Remember I taught you two faiths, the human faith and the Bible faith. So then some people was both, and some people was like, there's only one faith, just faith in God. But you always had one person like, I'm living by human faith only. So I said, okay, break it down. He says, well, the Jesus, what did he call it? He had a flavor for Jesusology stuff or whatever. He said, I'm not on that. He said, some other people here don't believe in God either, but they just going with the flow. I said, well, break down why you don't believe. He says, I just don't believe in all that stuff. God said thou shalt not kill, and he killed people. So then another young man comes up. He says, yeah, see, now he said he was living by God faith, but then he jumped on the bandwagon. He was like, yeah, see, God said thou shalt not kill. Then then Noah, what did he say? He said, he took Noah and his family, but let all other families drown. He ain't even let them know. So I'm like, did you read the story? He said, I read some of it. Not all of it, but I read some of it. So I'm thinking to myself, how are you speaking as one with authority? You ain't even read the story. Like you don't really even know. You just, based on a little bit of information you got, you're challenging me. But you're challenging me like I know. That's funny, ain't it? Ain't that funny? That's some of us in the room. You're questioning things you don't even know. You haven't taken the time out to really investigate. You may sit in the chairs and be like, man, I don't even understand. I don't even feel all this vision. Do you know what the vision is? Have you really taken the time to know? Have you looking at the whole picture? Do you see the people that are growing up? Yeah, they tripping today, but do you see where they're going? Well, you probably don't because you ain't taking the time out to care where they're going. You're just dealing with where they're at. You don't like what you see today. But me and my wife, we love what we see tomorrow. You see what I'm saying? So you sitting there going, man, this all happened at the school. I was talking to the coach about one of the players. He was like, man, he said, man, remember you came to practice. I went to practice, and this kid, the way he was shooting was just terrible. So I showing him how to toe knee elbow to shoot right. And he said, man, his shot is so jacked up, you can't do nothing with that. And I said, excuse me? I said, oh, no, you can do something with it. I said, he's just raw. I said, but if you give him the right fundamentals and he does them over and over and over, I said, he's probably going to be the best shooter out here. But he's never been taught it. But who was it? I think me and you was talking. I've taught so many people this week. But I think me and Pierre was talking, but I gave him a story of the guy. He goes to his friend's house, and he's talking to his friend, and he says, I got a question, man. He said, could I have that boulder in your yard? He said, that boulder right there? He said, man, I've been trying to get that thing out of my yard for the longest. He said, sure. So he takes the boulder. So 6 months later, the guy comes to his house. And he's an artist. He's a great artist. Does sculptures and all types of stuff. He walks in the house, and when he walks in, he looks and he sees a sculpture. He says, oh my God, I gotta have that. 50,000. I'm not gonna take nothing less. 50,000. 50,000 now. He said, for that one right there? He said, yeah, 50,000. He says, okay, cool, no problem. And so they get to talking later. He said, by the way, what did you ever do with that boulder? He says, I made about $50,000 off of it. What's the point? One person saw a boulder, one person saw a sculpture. And so that's kind of what the process of life is. You have some people are realists. They just call it like they see it. Some people are optimists. They see a sculpture and a stone. But the realist is talking without seeing the whole picture, right? So we're gonna keep going. We're all going somewhere. So I said all that to say today we're going to see what God has been trying to say, because the scripture says, 1 Corinthians 2, it says, the natural man can't understand the things of God, nor can he discern them. So if this was the first week you decided to really press into God, this was the first week that you decided to walk in the Spirit seriously. So up to that point, what was you making all your assessments on? The flesh? Your own understanding? Your busy schedule? Oh, you was trying to ride on the revelation you had from back in the day? Or the scriptures you read like 10 years ago? Oh, the scripture says, give us this day our daily bread, don't it? Amen. That means you're going to need something today, too. Remember, he told the children of Israel, don't save none up for tomorrow. And the people that didn't listen, what happened? What they saved up spoiled. Because that fresh rhema was for that day. So you can't be living off of that. So this week you spent some time in the Spirit. So now walking in the Spirit, you can discern, process, pick up what God has been trying to say the whole time. Right? So I'm saying that so I want you to get locked in. You'll see things different. Some people still are not going to see it because they didn't decide to spend no time this week, like Tori said. They didn't want to, Jesus gave his life, but they didn't want to give 7 days to God. That's all right. What did you say? You said was it Friday night? When we had asked somebody, did they fast? You said, well, you can still fast now, right? Well, you can fast this week. Yeah, I mean, you can fast anytime you want. We just corporately fasted, but you can fast this week because you might want to hear from God. All right, so the goal is for us to receive a full manifestation of what God has planned for us, and what I said was the goal is for flesh to become the Word, flesh to become the Word. If we go to Ephesians 4, let's go to Ephesians 4. Because the thing is, it's not, I know I was talking to somebody else this week, it's not about if you can do it. Because doing it don't mean you can handle it. Me and you was talking about that, right? So people will come to me, right? So I've had people, they have ministries. And so they have a ministry in them. And they'll be doing a ministry, but what they're doing is falling apart in their life. So let's say they got a financial ministry. So the Lord's called me to financial ministry. But they can't pay a bill. So what do you think the people getting? You would think you would be successful at it, and then you would say, the Lord wants to use me in this area. But you're not successful. What do you think they're getting? So how does that happen? How do people get caught up in the things that they shouldn't? And how does this tie into desires? It's not what you desire. It's can you handle the desire once God gives it to you? Like right now, $1 billion when you walk out the door. Can you handle it? Will you still be diligent and disciplined? Will you still serve the kingdom? Will you still be faithful?